What never fails to make you tear up or cry? My late partner passed away from leukemia at 38 years old. He hid a letter for me in our room in case he didn't make it. It's the most beautiful and eloquent thing I've ever read. He talks about regretting not being able to see my hair turn gray, or seeing me accomplish my dreams. He gives me permission to fall in love again, be messy, and move forward. The level of support is so encouraging. It's also a heartbreaking read and I've only read it 3 times. I will read it again on the 2-year date of his passing at the end of this month. One particular patient I had working in a trauma center. 19-year-old girl LD, never seen before, and didn't know at all. She was ejected from a vehicle and then crushed because her boyfriend was trying to show off. I was training new staff, and they were at the end of their training, so I was only in the room to provide supervision and step in if necessary, and I spent the entire trauma holding her hand, on her request, and trying to comfort her and keep her mind off of the injuries to both of her eggs. Her last words were spoken directly to me, "This really hurts. Can I go to sleep?" I cried for days after. I've never had a patient's death hit me as hard before or after. Child abuse statements. I work with child abuse victims. I had a 6-year-old want to disclose sex abuse by her dad one day. Her reason for disclosing that day: "It's my birthday and I wanted to do something for me on my birthday that killed me." Being alone. I live with my autistic son, and when he is with me, and not with his mother, I have literally no time or energy to think. When I am alone, my mind plays every future for him and I can't think a happy end. Someday he will lose me and his mother and will be alone in a daycare for people with special needs. And I read tons of articles and others how this all is for autistic people like him. It breaks my heart every time to think about him as an elderly person who has a broken heart but can't communicate it straight. I hope I will live long enough to outlive him. I am just 20 years older. The ending monologue of movie The Shawshank Redemption. I find I'm so excited I can barely sit still or hold a thought in my head. I think it's the excitement only a free man can feel, a free man at the start of a long journey whose conclusion is uncertain. I hope I can make it across the border. I hope to see my friend and shake his hand. I hope the Pacific is as blue as it has been in my dreams. I hope. Thinking about my dog's last day. She was 17 years old and her organs were shutting down. Before we took her to get put down, she was in the backyard eating her food. She walked slowly to us while wagging her tail and we took her. When we got home to bury her, I looked over at her dog bowl and there was still a bit of food in it. Kills me every time I think of it. My dad passed very traumatically from a house fire. He kept running back in the house to make sure everyone else was getting out okay, and he was struck and burned by debris. He spent 5 days unconscious in the ICU before his heart failed. He had a small YouTube channel where he would mostly record engines he was working on, and when I miss him a lot, I go to those videos and cry every time. Can't help falling in love. Elvis was supposed to be the song my sister and her fiancé danced to at her wedding. Instead, it was played walking into the church, at his funeral, after he took his own life. My poor sis was so strong that day, but that song still gets us both. Thinking about how poorly I treated my dad when he was still alive. He was always trying to find things in common with me to connect with me. When I found out he liked something I also liked, I just changed my mind and found it uncool. I looked down on the TV shows he liked and didn't realize until later that he had an awesome taste for quality campy television like The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. and other classics from that era of 90s syndicated television. If I knew him now, he'd be my best friend. I did try to connect with him in the last few years of his life, but he had dementia by then and couldn't follow things I knew he would have found interesting before. His last words to me were "it hurts" while I held his hand during catheterization on his last trip to the hospital. I was too embarrassed from seeing his penis to offer any true comfort. The end of Homeward Bound. Especially when Shadow says, "Peter, you're okay." Like, they went through all of that and almost died multiple times and Shadow was just glad to know Peter was okay. Gets me every time. Thinking of that abandoned little kitten I found. I called him Mortimer. Tried to keep him alive. Bottle feeding him. Keeping him warm, skin to skin. Staying awake through most of the night. Calling in sick day after day to stay with Kitty. Emergency vet scheduling with them saying he probably won't make it. Kitty didn't make it. It's when my oldest cat slowly stalked up to the cat, nudging her nose against Mortimer's head. Mortimer didn't move. Didn't react. I put him in a shoebox with his blanket, so he would not be cold. Buried him and left a little pebble for a tombstone. That was 20 years ago. I'm sorry, Mortimer. I couldn't save you. Edit. Wow. I had absolutely no idea that this would blow up in such a significant way. Thank you, everyone. I am doing my best to reply to each and every individual that commented. Here are so many heart-wrenching stories to read. I find solace in knowing that there are so many internet strangers who also do their best to help the most vulnerable creatures we stumble upon in our lives. When the musicians in Titanic start playing Nearer to My God Thee after saying goodbyes and then joining together till the end. What a group of legends. My wedding song. My husband died in an accident a little over 3 years ago, only 5 months after we got married. All I need to hear is the first note of the song and the grief hits hard. Strategically placed albums from my youth. If I'm half drunk and someone begins to play the album Four Cornered Night by Jets to Brazil, I will become uncharacteristically nostalgic, and then openly sob at the idea of how good I was at being 18 years old, vs how shitty I am at being 38 years old. Getting old is weird. The scene in My Girl when she is at Macaulay Culkin's funeral. Watching Fox and the Hound, I was watching the part where she releases Todd with my 5-year-old daughter. Her with a catch on her voice asking why. Me explaining her in tears saying she'll take him, she'll take care of him. Now I cry. Every damn time. The ending of The Pursuit of Happiness when he finally gets the job. The struggles leading up to that point makes me tear up all the time when they finally give him the position. I literally am physically incapable of reading this poem without shedding a tear. Do not stand at my grave and weep, I'm not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. Am not there. I did not die. The scene in the Les Mis movie where Gavroche, the idle boy, walks towards the army singing and is shot in the leg but keeps going, all while another character in the background, I think his brother, is screaming for him to come back. Then Gavroche is shot again, killing him before he can finish his song, and the brother breaks free from the people holding him back and runs to Gavroche. Then he just holds him and just sobs. Also in that same movie, where after the rebellion is over and the majority of the men are dead, the women in the street cleaning the blood singing the line "Children of the Barricade who didn't last the night." Did you see them lying where they died? Someone used to cradle them and kiss them when they cried. It just makes my cry, every time. The scene in Saving Private Ryan when the medic gets shot and dies on the field with the rest of his group desperately trying to save him. Muffasa's death in The Lion King. Also that scene in Interstellar where he sees those videos of his kids. That gets me sobbing like nothing else. Sometimes you just need a good cry. Fathers who tell their children how proud they are of them. Seeing other people crying in emotional pain makes me sob every time. I'm a member of a 12-step program, and in meetings we give out chips or keychains for different amounts of clean/sober time. After giving out multiple years, 1 year, 6 months, etc., the meeting chair will ask if there's anyone new or coming back, relapsed and is returning to the program, who wants to take a 24-hour chip. When anyone gets up and takes their 24H chip, the room invariably gives them the loudest applause and cheers and welcomes them back. The whole room knows how much courage it takes to come back and how scary it can be to get up and walk to the front of the room for that chip. It's such a beautiful thing to see, and it makes me cry every time. Had to be me. Someone else might have gotten it wrong. That scene in the David Attenborough documentary on Netflix, A Life on Our Planet, or something, where the orangutan is sat on the single tree on their own. Everyone stop using palm oil, please. This going to get buried, but I need to get it off my chest. It's my kids. When they were little, my mom had a brain aneurysm, my dad spiraled into a deep depression and they lost their home and business. At the same time, my mother-in-law has a stroke and my in-laws' finances collapsed and they were on the verge of losing their home too. So I worked crazy hard to be everyone's rock. I worked multiple jobs to help out my family. When I wasn't working, I was taking care of them emotionally and physically. I so drained that I didn't have much left to give to my kids. I missed soccer games and school plays and trick-or-treating and first words and countless other things. Thankfully, my wife was there for them. So they got to experience all the good things in childhood. Just wasn't there for it. Even when I was physically present, I was exhausted and cranky. Now they are teenagers and don't want to be around me. I just want to hold their hands, tell them that I love them and do something fun with them, anything at all. I just want to be with them. But my chance to hold them, teach them new things and experience the amazing joys of childhood with them are long gone. It tears me up inside. I'm bawling on the couch right now typing this. Yes, all the work paid off. Amazingly, both my mom and mother-in-law are alive, with physical impairments. My parents lost their house and business but they're in place that works for them. And my in-laws went through bankruptcy but were able to keep their house. I'm glad it worked out. But God, it hurts thinking about what missed. My daughter's best friend died in a car crash a couple of years back. She was 18. She'd been coming to our house since she was 4 or 5. She'd become a part of our family. Even when her and my daughter would have the silly arguments kids have when they become teens and a bit more independent, she'd still make herself at home the next time she was round. She had a smile that lit up the room. When I think about the night she died, I cry. When I think back to the heartbroken faces of 8 teenagers that appeared at our house an hour after it happened, I cry. When I think about how her family must feel, I cry. When I think about how her death has impacted my daughter's life, I cry. When I think about how her life could have turned out, I cry. Even writing this, tears run down my face. It's not your fault, Good Will Hunting. That's all I wanted to hear as a kid and growing up. Watching it for the first time, it felt like the whole scene was written for me down to the photos, and the fuck him Robin Williams is great, but Matt Damon's vulnerability was a scene stealer. The ending of The Return of the King. As soon as I hear the Grey Havens music, I get hit with a wave of emotion. Whenever my addict daughter gets arrested, 4 times in the last 2 weeks. Whenever I look at a picture of her. Whenever I remember a memory of her when she was little and she was still my angel. Whenever I try to think of something I could do to help her and realize that I've already done everything a parent can do, and it hasn't helped. I cry when it gets cold out, and wonder if she is stuck out the night somewhere, cold and lonely. I cry when I look at her 8-year-old daughter, that my wife and I are raising. I cry a lot lately. The end of Coco, IDC, how many times I watch it, it hits me every time. The scene in Scrubs when it suddenly clicks that Ben died, it's like a sudden slam to the gut, it gets me every time. Also when Laverne died, and the ending of my finale really gets the waterworks going. Hearing The Living Years by Mike and the Mechanics. My dad is still alive and I hug him whenever I can. But man, this song hits me in the feels. When my uncle died, I was in middle school. He never married and had no children. He, Andy, cherished every moment we had together. He was so kind, patient, loving, thoughtful, and selfless, truly a great man loved by all in the community. When I was young, I swear he intentionally exchanged bills to make sure his coin jar was filled every time Al visited so we could count it out and go buy something at the local junk store, something he always said was worth it because it put a smile on my face. He taught me gardening, would take me fishing, and let me eat all the junk food I wanted. He was raised a farm boy through and through, and I don't think he ever got his high school diploma. His only job I knew of was a Walmart greeter. He never drank, volunteered for his church, ran 4 to 6 miles a day, was very involved in the community, and was always very fit and ate well. Stomach cancer is what took him too soon. He was in his mid-60s and left everything to my brother and me with the caveat that it was used for education. The will said, so you can make something better of yourself than I did. Thinking of that phrase always gets me. I don't think he realized how big those shoes were, and it had nothing to do with education. Something I read on Tumblr a few years ago. It goes something like this. On the day of the 9/11 attack, the schools were called off and teachers were waiting with the middle schoolers to be picked up by their parents to take them home. One student is left out and the teacher asks why her parents weren't there yet, and she says they won't come because they were in the tower too. Makes me tear up every time I think of it. Remembering my son before he was diagnosed as autistic, not being able to talk, but being so happy. There's a memory, and a video, of him dancing along to the ballroom scene in Beauty and the Beast, and every time I think of it I cry. He just held his hands and span in a circle. My lovely little boy.